of contract multiple times. And we sat down, you and I, we went over it. And instead of really going over just the facts of the case, you turned it into an actual teaching session about best approach as a representative and as a salesperson, and how to dig deeper, how to step back and use more of a neutral tone and voice, just so we can come to a resolve. And I thank you for that. And thank God I'm still teachable as a result of making it work well. The other person I want to thank is Richard Bass. You know, this was a major contract question, and I sent him a text and he responded immediately, hey, let's talk at XYZ time. And like clockwork, Richard was there once again to go over, you know, the legal elements and then the practical elements of what could happen so we can have a real game plan. So I'm really grateful to be part of Keller Williams.
I love that. And most important, Evan, if you're using the phone and you're holding it, don't talk with your hands.
Yes. Learning once again, sir. I'm driving. That's my problem.
It's perfect. Drive safe. Keep your eye on the road. Hands on 10 and 2. And yet, Evan, there's always opportunities for us to grow and learn. And we as agents always go through phases. And some agents on this call are in the I don't know what I don't know because I don't know what I even need to know phase. And there's agents on this call that are making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet everyone on this call is at some point of E to P, entrepreneurial versus purposeful. And as long as you stay learning based, like you just shared you are, we grow and have the opportunity to become the best version of ourselves for our family and our clients. So well done, Evan. Thank you. All right, who's next? We are well over 50 right now on the call. So let's keep this train going for another 1, 2, or 3 shares.
Say it again. We're all happy to see you.
Oh.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Someone in the training room got
one more. So I want to show gratitude to everyone on this call. Thank you so much for attending. It's going to be like a really, really important meeting. So thank you, all of you guys.
Amen. Yeah, gratitude back to you for being here, showing up. I believe you're going to be in for a treat, and I'm super excited to bring it. All right, go once, twice.
There's one more in the chat.
Is there? Go ahead, give it.
From Lana Favero. I am thankful for Lee and also for Arianna. They are great, available when they need me, when we need them the most. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Lana.
Yes, 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 and yes. All right. Then we shall move into the next phase of the meeting. Thank you, everyone who participated. We never want to forget where we come from as a company. So let's dive into our mission, vision, values, belief, and perspective, and then bring Ari onto the spotlight, where her and I will break down the fundamental or the practical use of the changes from a agent's point of view and a attorney's point of view, and we're gonna have a collaboration, her and I, talking about what the changes look like and what that means practically for us. So have your pens and papers out, and we'll have the contract up on the screen. But first and foremost, culture. Who's up?
Culture as defined by Keller Williams is the result of organizing the goals of a business around solid, positive core values and then proceeding to cultivate them on a daily basis.
All right, our mission.
To build careers worth having, businesses worth owning, life worth living, experiences worth giving, and legacy worth living.
All right, our vision. To be the real estate company of choice for our agents and their customers. Our values.
God, family, then business.
How about our beliefs as a company?
Win-win or no deal. Integrity, do the right thing. You know what? Can we do that a little bit differently?
Sure.
Yes. The floor is yours.
Stuff the bold on the left, everybody in the room, you say it, and then I'm gonna say the stuff on the right, okay?
Awesome.
1, 2, 3,
Win-win.
or no deal.
Integrity.
Do the right thing.
Customers.
Always come first.
Commitment.
In all things.
Communication.
Seek first to understand.
Creativity.
Ideas before results.
Teamwork.
Together, everyone achieves more.
Trust.
Starts with honesty.
Equity.
Opportunities for all.
Success.
Results through people.
Well done, Sarah. Well done, room. We're gonna come back to this screen in a second because, oh, I can't wait till our mission moment. And our perspective. We are a technology company that provides the real estate platform that our agents, buyers, and sellers prefer. Keller Williams thinks like a top producer. We act like a trainer consultant and focus all of our activities on service, productivity, and profitability. Which brings us now to our mission moment. And one of the value propositions of this company is that the harder you work, the more successful you should be. The more successful you are, the more money you should make. Now, the purpose of starting a business, and I'm going to stop sharing for a second, I'll bring this back up. The purpose of business is profit. Make no mistake, it is not to make money. Because there are a lot of realtors who make money who are in incredible debt. So the purpose of business is profit. And the purpose of profit is to fund the perfect life. Now, the definition or my definition of the perfect life is to truly live before you die. Now, whatever that means to you. So in understanding that the purpose of business is profit, then it makes sense that the more money you make at our company, the more money you keep. It's not make a ton of money and the company keeps collecting from you. So the value proposition of this company is win-win or no deal. And so we pour into you so that you can take the tools like today and implement them to build systems, leveraging models, and make as much money as your heart desires. And the company just collects a cap. Well, this agent that we are about to recognize should be in the training room. Can I get a thumbs up? Those that know that what we're about to do? Yes, no, maybe so? Cool. Joined our company on blind faith about 3 years ago. And doubled their business joining our company, then doubled their business the next year, and then doubled their business again this year. And the personality of this individual understands how our cap works, which is let me cap as fast as possible so that I can earn 100% of everything that I make for as long as I possibly can. So because they understand this philosophy, they gamified it. Anyone on here like to play games or take something stressful and turn it into a game to make it more fun? I do. Do you? So this individual said, I want to cap in 6 weeks, which means for 10.5 months, truly earn 100% commission. no transaction fee, no baloney, legit 100% to them. And I couldn't be more proud to give the acknowledgement, acknowledgement to this individual, Jose Anzola. Congratulations on capping in 6 weeks.
Who's that in the picture?
Who
though?
is that in the picture?
I don't know that dude.
Jose, he made it.
You have to remember that's what it looks like. That's how quickly you age when you cap in 6 weeks. That's what people don't realize.
No, that's what happens when you deal with Evan for 2 years and a half.
So that's Evan, Jose's business partner, and together they gamify this capping structure to get it done as fast as humanly possible. And I couldn't be more proud of you guys embracing our models and laughing all the way to the profitability bank as you guys crush your 2022 goals, and Jose clearly crushing your profit goals in 2022. Because you are in momentum, you are building, you are growing your business, and wow. So pleasure to be in business with you. You get your hat as soon as it's brought over to you, and congratulations on capping.
Thank you, Lee.
Congratulations.
Awesome, 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 awesome. All right, so Ari, let's have some fun here. So you should have the ability to share. If you don't, just let me know if you can or you can't. And so let me kind of set the stage here. The next however long, guys, is just gonna be us breaking this down because it's not very often, it's not very often that a contract has adjustments like the state put out on Monday. And understanding these changes is your value. Make no mistake, learning and understanding a contract is your value. It's not you're cool and you're a good person and you work hard. It's that you understand the ins and outs of a listing contract and a purchase contract. And whether you represent a buyer, you need to know this. And especially if you represent a seller, you need to know how to negotiate and how to represent and protect your clients. And so, Ari, I will bring in the perspective of the way I understood the contract previously as a mega agent that sells over 100 homes a year for the last 11 years. And you'll bring in the practical or the legal side of what you understand the sections to be that we're going to cover. Fair enough?
Fair.
Yeah. And so, guys, this is a treat. This is huge because you are getting from the source of a professional that will bring the ideas practically to you. So have your pen and paper ready. And most important, understand, this is important, understand how to present a contract. And here's the key. Look on the left-hand side of the contract and you will see numbers. We will say what numbered line we are, and that's how you explain a contract to a seller or a buyer as well. For example, on line 1 is the seller, on line 2 is the buyer. On lines 6 through 11 is the description of the property. You guys see how I did that? That's how you break a contract down as a professional to the public so that they can understand and you can lead them through this. So Ari, the floor is yours. And what I'll do is I'll hop in and think of this as we're just kind of on, just having a back and forth, and take it away.
Thanks, and thank you for the opportunity to present this information to all of you. The biggest substantive change to the contract is in the financing provision, okay? And we are going to jump to paragraph 8, section 8, beginning on line 97 on page 2 of the contract, okay? The first portion of financing didn't change much, except it cleaned up a lot of language, and box A just means that the buyer is purchasing with cash. Box B is the financing provision, and this is where the meat and potatoes of the change has happened. The loan approval now requires an appraisal. This was not required before. So there's now 2 parts to the loan approval, right? There is the diligence and the approval of the buyer's financing circumstances, tax returns, pay stubs, qualifying to pay the loan. The second part, which was not in the previous contract, is that the buyer's mortgage broker or lender receives an appraisal or alternate valuation satisfactory to the lender. So formally, appraisals were not a contingency. And what would happen, or what could happen, is a buyer could present a loan approval, right, to a seller, and that loan approval could have a condition for an appraisal. And that appraisal may not come, let's say, a day before closing. And if that appraisal doesn't meet the lender's criteria, they could withdraw that approval or deny the loan because it was conditioned upon an appraisal. And here we are off of the market for the entire period of the contract. And the buyer would possibly have an out to terminate and receive deposits back, negotiate some sort of contract extension, and ultimately not close on the contract closing date. So that's literally one of the biggest changes. And my practical tip to you, and then Leah, let you chime in, communication with the lender and leveraging with a lender is going to be more important than ever, because they're going to have an insight into, hey, I've noticed appraisals are taking 20 days. Appraisals are taking 2 weeks, whatever it is. So you can govern yourself accordingly and manage your buyer to make sure these things are ordered immediately when you sign a contract, and making sure that your financing loan approval period allows for enough time to receive an appraisal.
Yeah, and so hopping in there, Ari, you know, when we use the term like make sure we have enough time, one of the best philosophies is when you're drafting an offer representing the buyer, you communicate with your lender before you put any timelines in the contract. So it makes no sense taking the loan officer, putting them in a corner and forcing them to do timelines that they didn't agree to. So right before you draft the offer representing the buyer, you call your lender, the lender that's representing the buyer, and you ask them what timelines best suit the current status of their company. Because a couple of years ago, you could get loans through in 21 days. Today, everything is delayed in theory because the market's so hot and things are strained. So never put the loan officer in a bind by creating dates that will generate issues down the line.
Well said. So that's part one of the financing. Another change to the definition of loan approval. The definition of loan approval has been broadened or maybe constricted to exclude contingencies for buyer's sale of a home. So whereas before, a loan approval could have a line item contingency for the buyer to sell their home, that will no longer be an effective out for you. You must, for the buyer must have rider V accompanied the contract in order to take advantage of the benefits offered by a sale of a home contingency.
So let me hop in there, Ari.
Yeah.
So hold on, David. So when a person owns a home and they want to move, but they have to sell their home to be able to buy the second home, it can be done, and I've done it probably 5, 6, 7 times in my career. But the best way to describe this particular scenario is like doing a tightrope across the Grand Canyon during a hurricane. I want you guys to visualize that. Hey, I'm selling my house. I'm going to buy a house in Boca, but I can't buy the house in Boca until this house sells and closes. So I'll use the money from the house here to buy the house in Boca. It's dominoes that all have to be lined up specifically. And if one piece of those dominoes are out of line, everything falls apart. So Ari, what I heard you say is that if this is the case, meaning we represent the buyer and or we represent a seller, in this contract, in the purchase, the addendum V, which is contingency on the sale of buyer's property, must be executed in this agreement.
Correct.
Got it. Got it. David, hop in.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. I just got a quick question for Ari, and thank you, Ari, for taking time out to do this for us. So what I heard is going back to the loan approval. Now the appraisal has to be done within the loan approval time period.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. Just wanted
Yes,
to
sir.
confirm.
So let me also hop in there. Well done, David. So loan approval means that the only thing left is that the bank has agreed on everything. The underwriter has approved the buyer, and they are approving the money to be sent to the title company so that title can be transferred. So one of the stipulations in theory is that the property is worth, in the bank's eyes, the amount of money that they're going to lend. And so now they've tightened that up, Ari, correct? They've tightened it up that now, hey, you can't get loan approval if the property doesn't appraise, and therefore the appraisal has to be done, negotiated, and cleared before the deadline of loan approval.
That's perfect. Well said.
And basically, from just one more thing, so
Yeah.
basically if they don't get the appraisal response within the loan approval period and they pass that date, they basically waived the appraisal.
Okay, so this is a good time for me to explain how, because everything affects everything else, right? So let's say that, let me bring it bigger. So if during the loan approval period, the buyer is unable to get a loan approval, the contract proceeds as though it is cash. So whatever the circumstances, David, whether the appraisal wasn't provided in time, whether something else happens, for whatever reason, a loan approval can't be provided during that deadline, the contract proceeds as cash. So there is doesn't matter anymore. The buyer doesn't have the advantage of canceling if a home doesn't appraise, whenever that appraisal comes. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And so let me hop in, because questions, the beautiful part of contracts is that it's then, ooh, what if,
Right.
what if? And these are all valid. They're valid. And yet, what's important is that we have all different ranges of agents on this call. And yet, the agents that have used this contract over and over and over and over and over again. Whoa, Kina,
Oh, sorry.
please mute. The agents who have used this over and over and over and over again are will have different scenarios, and someone's like, what's a loan commitment period? And so my goal is, as Ari uses certain terms, bring in the layman part of it, which then will spark the agents that have done lots of transactions go, oh, well, in this scenario or this scenario. So without the call to go sideways, I want to address the questions. So let's bring them into the chat group so that we could try to get to them as we move in a forward direction. Otherwise, we're going to go right, all the way to the left, go
I got it.
diagonal.
So,
Yeah.
right. So moving on from that specific scenario that I was talking about, that a loan approval definition no longer includes sale of a buyer's home. That's another change. Next, a buyer may take the entire loan approval period to notify a seller of loan approval. That's another significant change. The former contract used to require buyers to immediately or promptly inform the seller once they've been approved. They now can take the whole loan approval period, which is typically 30 days, to provide notice to the seller.
So hold that thought, Ari.
Yep.
Hold that thought. So notice means that you send an email
Right.
to the listing agent that the buyer is approved or the buyer is not approved. And if you start to get near the loan approval deadline, representing a buyer, you send an addendum extending the loan commitment deadline, or your buyer's escrow will be at risk. That is what notice means. Go ahead, Ari.
In fact, that's an opportunity for me to, I'm going to skip around a little bit.
Just make sure you say the lines so
yes.
that those that have it on the screen, they can
Right.
catch up.
Okay, so we're going to go to the standards, which is on page 18.
So
And
the
I'll tell you-
standards, as she finds that, is all the fine print in the last several pages of the contract, which I recommend everyone takes a while and reads them, highlights, underlines, because this is the meat of the rules of the contract.
Excuse me, not page 18, section 18, and the standards begin on line 403. The
Perfect.
standard that I'm referring to now and that Lee was touching on is on line 560, where am I? 564, okay? Delivery, okay? All at line 569, all notices must be in writing and may only be made by mail, fax, personal delivery, or email, okay? What it changes is it excludes any sort of texting or social media notice.
Hold on.
That is
So
no
you're
longer
saying-
valid.
So you're saying that text message is not a form of communication when things go to hell in a handbasket?
Yeah, any sort of notice that's required under the contract will not be acceptable in a text, WhatsApp, or other social media notification.
That is extremely important. Communication is not legally binding through text message.
Right.
I'm going to say that again. Stop using text messaging in negotiations and contracts. Hold on, let me say it a different way. Use the phone and then follow up in an email
Perfect.
to negotiate.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the financing provisions and then we're going to wrap it up in this section. Okay.
Mhm.
So I explained that the buyer may take the entire loan approval period to provide prompt notice in writing to the seller. Now, what happens, and I'm going to briefly go over this. This is addressed in lines 133 through the end. This is this begins on line 133.
Mhm.
If a buyer does not receive their loan approval during their loan approval period, which is typically 30 days, the contract proceeds as a cash transaction, okay? Or the seller may also terminate the contract within 3 days after the loan approval was due, okay? Lee, I'll let you jump in. I just want to explain
Going.
what that means moving forward as a cash transaction. Okay. Previously, under the old contract, what would happen is the buyer waives their financing contingency. Okay. The difference here is subtle, but it means that it proceeds as cash. The buyer can no longer take advantage of any other loan conditions in a contract. An example, when you have a loan, there is an extension for a CD disclosure, okay? If the buyer hasn't provided their loan approval, it's cash. So it doesn't matter whether or not the lender has met the CD disclosure. That would not be a qualifying grounds for an extension. So that's a subtle difference and can have a big effect. If the seller does terminate the contract within that 3 days because the buyer hasn't provided a loan approval, buyer will get their deposit back. I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
gives, I mean, this is huge. As you say, subtle, and yet it's a big deal as representation, knowing our timelines and staying ahead and getting extensions as we get close to loan approval deadline. So I like to look at contracts and representation as a stoplight. Green, no stress, we're good to go, everyone's all right. Yellow, hey, we're starting to get close to the deadline. I'm gonna have calls with all of my people, my loan officer, their processor. I'm going to start to have conversations when we're getting 5 days before, 7 days before, and say, hey, we're a week out or a business week out. Where are we at? What are your turnaround times? This is where you start to take notes, y'all. What are your turnaround times? And what are your thoughts on us meeting loan commitment deadline next Wednesday? And this is where having a partner like Catherine, who understands the importance of deadlines and extending, if you're getting towards the end of this yellow period and you move to the red, where their turnaround times are going to exceed the loan commitment deadline. Because you get up to the loan commitment deadline, seller doesn't have to do anything. They straight up can say, cool. They stay quiet and they cancel the contract, and your buyer's out, their inspection, their appraisal, and all of that money, because as an agent, you didn't stay on top of your timelines and get extensions well in advance and communicate with the other party and stay hooked, like you're do-si-doing, like you're dancing, and you're working together with the other side should you start to hit roadblocks. How'd I do, Ari?
Great, excellent. In a market like we have now, where there's people lined up to pay more than your buyer may be willing to pay, it is ever more important to make sure that we don't miss these deadlines. Okay, 2 more changes in financing that I want to highlight. Line 118, the language good faith and diligent effort was added just to stress the importance of a buyer's duty to submit a timely and accurate loan application. Just putting a little more teeth in the contract and standard for which the buyer has to proceed. Then on line 123, this is an interesting change too. Seller may request in writing, it was not required in writing before, the status of a loan application, appraisal, loan approval, and property-related conditions of a loan approval. So at any point, a seller can request in writing and buyer must deliver this sort of information to selling side. Before, it was just that the buyer was to keep the seller informed. Now a seller can make a written inquiry for what I would imagine a more detailed status update of the loan approval process.
Hopping in there. All right, this was the most exciting part of the entire, when I read this is the part that got my butterflies going, because what makes you a great listing agent is that you understand contracts. What makes you a great buyer's agent is that you understand contracts. And here, as a listing agent, we now have teeth to say, I want to know what's up. Where are you? What's going on? And I just sent you an email. And now, per the contract, the buyer's agent nor the lender can play games. To stay in contract, they must give you the data that you're requesting so that you can keep the seller happy and that you as a listing agent know that you're moving closer to a closing. This is a big deal, in my opinion, as a professional real estate agent, that now as a listing agent with teeth per the contract, I can ask and I will get the status of the buyer per these few items. Thank you for bringing this part up, Ari, because this was my, I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Lee, quick question in relation to that. So in the event, and I just went through something in my situation, in the event that they do not provide information based on an email official request to have an update of the status of where they are with the lender, what action now does the listing side, what can they take if they're not getting a response?
Go ahead, Ari.
Okay. So just like any other term of a contract, you have to enforce it. And what it would be is possibly a breach of contract. You know,
Okay.
And that's
so at that point, if listing side wanted to say, hey, we want to cancel this at this point, we would have to obviously talk to someone like you.
yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be an opportunity to cure. None of the pitfalls of a new contract is none of these things have been played out in court yet, right? So kind of what you're asking, Evan, is how would a court interpret this type of breach and what kind of damages would they award in a situation like that? We can't really answer that question yet.
Right. And hopefully, as Lee stated, this just gives you enough teeth.
Exactly.
Because now you have something black
To
and
refer
white
to.
in a contract to
Correct.
refer to say, hey, this can
Correct.
get really ugly, or just get us in touch with your lender now.
Which is the power of knowing the
Right.
contract, and you attract more bees with honey. This isn't about being a jerk about it. And I'm not saying you are, Evan. Again,
Yes, you are.
Knowing the contract, you now can educate and share this part of the contract in an email and request politely the information.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
That's
Okay.
all. Real quick, Ari, in the chat, what happens if we're under contract with the old contract? Nothing happens because you're not under contract with this contract. So that is why we have a grace period as agents to continue using the old contract until you guys start using this contract. And the other side understands how this contract works, which all of you are light years ahead of the average agent. Congratulations. So
a little pro tip, you can always tell which kind of where you're at in a contract by looking at the bottom. So the footers in the contract, see how 2017 is scratched out and 2021 appears there. So that's kind of a cheat sheet. If you're presented with an offer or you're preparing an offer that doesn't have the 2021 revision, you know you're not working from the most recent contract.
Let me hop in there, Ari. God, that was so good. Pro tip too, and I love that you started with that. Pro tip, pay attention to the bottom of all pages, because there's going to be some smirky agent that throws one page in and moves them around. And that's a whole nother can of worms. So make sure that like the last page with the addendums has this contract, or that someone doesn't put in a last page of something. Always, when you're reading a contract, I'm going to repeat that, when you're reading the contract, look at the bottom of each page and make sure that it's the same contract that they sent and that you're negotiating.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna move on to section 9. This is closing costs and fees and charges, begins on line 163, okay? Line 169 adds a charge for FERPTA, withholding and reporting to the seller. We won't get into what FERPTA is, that's a whole other class. It's a tax on foreign sellers, okay? All it is that those charges are now added as a line item as a seller cost, okay? Where are we? Section C, which is title, evidence, and insurance. And these 3 boxes, beginning on line 197 through 209, these are the 3 1, 2, and 3. These are the 3 different ways that you can process title insurance, right? Our office most commonly uses the Miami-Dade and Broward provision. And there was a change to clarify here that if this box is checked, buyer designates closing agent. Just makes it a little clearer.
Very clear. I never understood who, because then it's like customary in different places, and now it's black and white, which is perfect. And it doesn't mean that you can't put it in the additional terms and adjust this, because all addendums supersede the contract. Special clauses supersede the contract. So if you represent the seller and you want to use harbor title, you would disclose in the additional comments, or use a blank addendum that says buyer and seller agree to use harbor title for closing.
Which I personally recommend in all contracts.
Me too. Me too.
All right, so surveys. This is another
hold on, Ari. So right before we get to page 210, I love that you guys are putting a bunch of questions. We'll attack this once we get to let's stay in a rhythm, and then we'll attack these questions at the end. I feel the energy, and it's weird that you could feel energy on Zoom, that like we got engagement and you guys are focused. So thank you.
Okay, line 210 just requires that surveys are delivered 5 days prior to closing, rather than the title evidence deadline. So that's just another minor change. I want to now just jump ahead to okay, where is it? It's section 11 right here, line 291. Okay, this is an interesting add. They've added a buyer can require a seller to escrow 125% of estimated costs to bring a property back into the same condition it was when you signed a contract. So when you do a walkthrough, if a property is not in the same condition it was when you signed the contract, and there are certain repairs or anything that needs to be done, you can require up to 125% of that to be held in escrow until it's completed.
Let me hop in there, Ari, because that brought me back to one of my wonderful, I've had 2 beautiful nightmare great stories. One of them being, we did the walkthrough and pulled up to the house, and it was a sale in Coral Springs, and there was a river coming out of the garage. And I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. Walked in the house, and there was about this much water throughout the entire house. There was a step down living room that was a pool. And I hear water gushing out of the laundry room. Look at the back window or the back sliders, and they're wide open. I was like, huh. I don't think we're closing today. So I represented the buyer, walked over, and apparently the house was broken into. And the robbers stole the washer and dryer and decided to rip the pipe out of the wall as they stole the washer. So I guess they were in a rush and didn't unscrew the pipe and broke the pipe, and water was just literally, the house was a pool or an ocean for an ant, if you will. And so in this case, the seller is required to bring the property back to the standard at which it was when we did the inspection, right, Ari?
That's right.
Perfect. I had another occasion real quick where did the walkthrough, and the house was under probate. We were under probate for 9 months. House was great for 9 months. And during buyer's walkthrough, found out that a bunch of folks went through the neighborhood and took air conditioners. Well, they found out this house was vacant, so they went into the house and took anything metal out of the walls and the air conditioners, and so anything copper. And so needless to say, we didn't close that until the seller brought the property back to the standard at which, and I thought that the seller can say, hey, buy it as it is. But not only did the old contract have this, but now they made it super clear as to what the seller must do, and that's bring the property back. So we had to buy a new air conditioner, install a new air conditioner, replace drywall, and put a cage around the air conditioner so it doesn't disappear by the time we closed again. Nightmares, y'all.
Okay, I'm gonna go over some other minor changes that happened throughout the contract, then some others in standards. And if you want, and we have time, Lee, I can go over the riders and addenda briefly, but let me just wrap up with the contract. So back on page 1, personal property, line 17, removed intercoms. It's kind of an old feature that isn't in most homes anymore. Added some additional personal property. Thermostats, doorbells, television, TV wall mounts, mounting hardware.
That's big. I've had problems with that, right? Where
Right.
the seller's like, that's my mounting hardware. It's like, well, now it's in the contract.
Right, exactly. So that's just something to bring to your attention. Moving to back to page 2 on line 60. This is interesting. The closing of this is a definition of closing date and when a closing can occur. Shall occur when all funds required for closing are received by the closing agent and collected. What does that mean? Buyer sent a wire at 5 p.m. on Friday. I can't close until Monday. So that's the difference, right? I could have a signed loan package. I could have everything done. I could have everything closed, but the escrow agent, the closing agent must have all funds collected in order to close. Lee, did you want to chime in or keep going?
Yeah, no, I again, it's black and white. Can I give the keys? I don't have funds. So therefore, no, because now we're breaking the contract because we haven't closed by definition.
Right.
And that's why knowing the contract, guys, and having great professionals around you that understand timelines is very, very important. So to pivot, Ari, I think what we should do is tease the riders for another day,
I think so
being
too.
that we're at 12:17 and the chat room is on fire.
Happen.
Yo, gosh, it's so good. And so let's dive into that. Can we get some digital thumbs up if this was worthy of our time today? Some digital thumbs up. If you're live, put your thumbs up. Yeah, look at those popping. Thank you.
Hey, Lee, are you going to be doing another session with Ari on contract? Because there are a lot of interesting changes in here, and doing a smaller group where we can ask questions. Are you going to do that in the future?
Only if you're getting value out of this, Evan.
100%. I have a lot of questions and I'm not going to even present today.
Thank you. Thank you. And
so you know, okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you, sir.
Look, this isn't a one and done. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
And this is tremendous value that we're bringing to you. And so what a great opportunity for you guys to, when we do share that we're going to do this again, that you bring friends in the business whose brokerages aren't bringing this to them, so they can see and feel the sheer value that we bring to you at no additional charge. All right, so Ari, let's see what we got. I'm gonna start from the bottom and go up. So what if the property is as is, which I believe we're looking at an as is right now.
Yes.
Does the seller have to make repairs?
No.
Perfect. Now let's use this a different way. Properties as is. We're passing. So the property was great. Let's use the example of the washer and dryer being stolen. So properties as is, we're past inspection, washer dryer was there. We show up at walkthrough, property's destroyed because someone broke in. The seller is responsible for bringing that property back to the standard that it was, correct?
Correct.
Got it. And so he said shows signs of termites. Well, there weren't termites 3 weeks ago, but there's termites today.
Right.
Seller has to remedy termites.
Probably.
Right.
I mean, what I think it would, it probably negotiable. So you definitely have an opportunity to do a termite inspection. So if that wasn't done during the inspection period, that may be an issue.
That totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. And again, you have to prove that there weren't, like, that's the purpose of doing inspections. Right, to inspect and right to cancel. You didn't do a termite inspection. And again, we're talking about radical issues, not like, oh, I think I saw
a wing.
You know, we're talking radical issues here, Juan, that there's possible.
And you may even be stuck, because if there was such a condition that would have been discovered during an inspection period that was not discovered during the inspection period, that may not be a breach of that may be not your right to terminate during a walkthrough.
So it's gray. Let's just use it as it's gray, and your best bet is not to poise and start bringing a lot of energy around something like that.
That's right.
Yet houses is broken into and things are ripped out of walls. This is the black and white issue. Can we use the Miami-Dade? So number 3 in choice of title. In Orlando, or is it only in Broward and Dade?
You can negotiate for anything that you want. And while I wouldn't recommend that,
right,
because it would create ambiguity, but you can, as Lee suggested, state that you want buyer to pick and pay for title, or buyer to pick title and seller to pay search fees in the additional terms.
So and also, Ari, I want to hop in. One of the things that I learned is scroll down. Where's 3? Where it's no, right there. Yeah. So we're talking, guys, about lines 203 to 209. And the reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, the reason that if we represented a property in Palm Beach County, or we represented Martin County or Orange County, that is not Broward or Dade, the reason that we would not check 203 is because only Broward and Dade, out of all 70 counties in the state, we use abstract title in these 2 counties, which is really the reason that there's Miami-Dade and Broward provision, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Well, and also because, yes, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah. So the reason that you wouldn't check that in Palm Beach County is because title isn't done the same way in those counties as just a blanket statement.
Right.
Fair enough. When will the new contract be required?
I don't think that there is a requirement. So for instance, you could, as long as it's in writing and it meets Florida statute, you make your own contract. You know what I mean? There's no requirement. This is the preferred contract that you should be proceeding under, and will probably be most common. But you can use any contract.
Right. Perfect. And so that's the best practice, guys, is that you start to use this contract. I mean, I remember when the CRISP contract came out
Right.
years ago, it was like, you'd send the CRISP contract and agents were like, what state is this from?
Right.
It's like, well, actually, it's a state contract. And so the answer is you now have an advantage. And when you get this, you can represent your clients as a listing agent and understand the changes. We touched on this one, so I'll let you answer this, Ari. If we're outside of a period, I'm guessing Juan was referring to a loan commitment period or an inspection period, which again are two different scenarios. Does the buyer lose their deposit?
Yes, possibly.
Right. Does the buyer's agent have to use an appraisal contingency, which the question is an addendum that I don't know what letter it is, but there used to be a letter addendum for a particular contingency of appraisal to protect the deposit?
It's really nuanced. I'd say it's a complicated answer, but just understand that the change in this contract requires an appraisal to be done during the loan approval period.
Mhm.
Okay. Whether or not, and the lender has to accept it. Okay. So whereas before, if a buyer could qualify for a loan without having an appraisal that meets the sales price, that would be considered a loan approval. That is no longer considered a loan approval.
All right. Guys, how do we do today? Let's get some digital thumbs up. All right, you rocked it. We're at 12:25, which gives us a couple minutes for us to breathe for a second. And for me to share my gratitude, that was fun. I mean, that really like filled my cup. I love bouncing off of you and just hearing how you understand and can truly break this down. I guess a couple things that I'd like to share with those that are experienced and those that are new. Periods in a contract, like where there's a dot at the end of a sentence, changes everything afterwards. So when you're reading a contract, it is important that you stop where there's a period and look at that sentence again to truly understand what it means. Whereas when we read books, we go period and we go to the next sentence and then we go to the next sentence, we go to the next sentence. When understanding a contract, stop where there's a period and know that whatever it says next can change everything else that you thought it was going to say. So stop where there's a period and acknowledge what it says. Don't go through a paragraph and just kind of read it very fast. That's a little pro tip. Oh God, I love that you use that. Pro tip. Yes.
Hey, Lee, based on what I'm seeing here, it looks like, although incredibly fair contract, it does put more protections in now on the seller side. So if as a listing agent, you would almost want this because it gives you a little bit more, more of an ability to keep abreast of everything going on, or you have some teeth to take action. Is that correct? Did I interpret that right?
Good, Ari.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And while it creates a stronger burden on the buyer, I also think it creates a sense of fairness for the buyer too. So I wouldn't
Correct.
be discouraged from using the contract as a buyer's agent. And I would also encourage you to use it as a listing agent.
Okay.
Sweet. All right, guys. Hopefully you had as much fun as I did. We're going to get you guys out of here at 12:30. I'm so impressed that we went through this and stopped right at where we needed to. All right, let me share. Again, I wanted to go through a couple things, housekeeping. So stop sharing so that I can hop in. I'm going to stop recording.